One of the central questions of this unit, as indeed every single unit in this class, is the ongoing question of order and authority. As we've seen, the Reformation on the one hand opened up new paths, new possibilities, new freedoms for individual Christians, but it also called into question the fundamental ideal of a unified Christian society, and raised the possibility now that it was thinkable for Europe to be fragmented into different countries that had a different official religion, a different view of what it meant to be a follower of Jesus. This reality did not lead immediately to the principle of toleration, and indeed the initial reaction to the broken and fragmented body of Christ, of the fragmented church, was a series of religious wars and a new kind of anxiety in Europe about the nature of authority itself. Many of the conflicts of the late 16th and early 17th century were framed as religious conflicts. They might have been plenty of economic and political reasons behind them, but many of them were argued or presented publicly the defense of one's position as a defense of the religion of that land. Mixed into the debate over religious authority was a new phenomenon that began, well, we can track it back to the late 14th century, but it began in earnest in the middle of the 16th century and extended all the way up to 1700, and that was an intensified interest in witchcraft and a conviction by political authorities and religious authorities that their territories were being threatened by demonic and spiritual forces that needed to be eradicated, they needed to be identified, and they needed to be eliminated. And the way to do that was to find out who the witches were and to bring legal evidence against them and then to execute them. You might find this hard to believe, but in the period between about 1550 and 1700, there was something like 100,000 witchcraft trials in Europe, with as many as 60,000 witches executed in that period of time. 60,000. I spoke earlier briefly about the Anabaptist persecution that might have resulted in the deaths of 2,000 or 3,000 people. It's a lot of people. There's no getting around it. But I think we should keep the magnitude in mind. 60,000 people executed on the charges of being a witch. How are we to explain that? How can we make sense of that? Particularly since the unit that we're moving into now is the age of the Enlightenment, the age of reason, a time when you might think Europeans would have put their superstitions behind them, the idea of executing people on the grounds of their belief behind them, and yet we don't get there that quick or that fast. There is a problem, a series of problems that we need to address before we come to understand the emergence of reason as a dominant framework for understanding European history. The main text that we'll be using in this unit is a primary source book. It's called The Trial of Temple Anneke, and it consists primarily of an introduction that sets the stage. You can read through that quickly. It's okay with me if you skim the introduction, although the context matters, but don't linger on it too long. Most of the text consists of transcripts of trial documents related to one person accused of witchcraft, a woman by the name of Temple Anneke. And your task as would-be historians, or as historians in training, your task is to do what historians do, that is to read the primary sources. Granted, they're in translation for us, so it's not quite the same as the original, But we're going to read these sources carefully, and our question is going to be to try to make sense of them. What's going on here? And are there things happening beneath the surface that maybe you can infer but aren't exactly explicit as you read through this text? A few tips to help you as you follow through on this assignment. I want to assure you that it's okay to skim. There will be places in this text where the court authorities list about 50 questions that they want to ask Temple Anneke. And then in the very next document, we go back and we have those same questions repeated with Temple Anneke's responses. It's okay to skim the first list. You don't have to read every question and then read it again. What I really would like you to do, though, is to get a sense of the unfolding drama. This is like a script of a true drama as it unfolded. And ask yourself along the way, what are the key turning points in this trial? At what place, when does it seem clear that things are not going to end well for Temple Anneke? That's a spoiler alert. I'll just let you know she ends up being executed. How do we know when that's going to happen? Were there things that Temple could have done that might have led to a different outcome? That's another important question. And along the way, I want you to be attentive to the challenge of reading sources critically, trying to figure out what's being said, what's not being said, and then how do we interpret them. The assignment will ask you to address some specific questions. That's good. And I would encourage you to read the text in installments throughout the week, having read the assignment, the paper project in advance of the reading, so that as you read, you know what the assignment is that you're moving toward. A few quick words of context that might help you as you read through this text. First, it's crucial to understand a difference between something called malefica. The authors describe this in the introduction. I just want to underscore this. Malefica is the practice of black magic. All Europeans in the middle, up through the middle of the 17th, even 18th century, many people even today, assume that magic exists, assume that there is some connection between the transcendent world and the material world that can somehow be controlled by human intervention. That's what magic is, the control of transcendent power in the world of time and space. And if you're a magician, you can do that. Most people assume that can exist, that exists, it's possible. See, many people up until the modern age have assumed that. The big question, though, is whether it's white magic or black magic, whether you're going to use this magic for good ends or for evil ends. Black magic, malefica, is the practice of that power for evil ends. And that can happen. You can call a curse down on your neighbor. You can cause somebody's horses to get sick. You can make their crops fail if you are a practitioner of black magic. Black magic alone is not enough to condemn someone for witchcraft. It's important. It's a crucial component, but it's not enough. To condemn somebody of being a witch in the 17th century, you needed to combine the practice of black magic with what is known as diabolism, and that simply means a pact with the devil. The practitioner of black magic needs to be in conscious league with Satan. There has to be some agreement made with Lucifer, with the devil. And this is played out it's explained in the standard text of witchcraft, written already in 1486, called the Malleus Maleficarum. I'll give you a PowerPoint presentation on this. You can see it in a little more detail. And in that it explains how to make legally clear that a witch is both a practitioner of malefica, black magic, and also has made a pact with the devil. And as we'll see in the trial of Temple Anneke, that's exactly what the court seeks to prove, and it is that combination, black magic, diabolism, that ultimately results in Temple Anneke's death.